Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. So the other day I was on a podcast with a few cool guys. Wow, what a segue by the way, you should totally check it out. And you know, just doing the usual, having a chat about TBC, content pacing, potential for changes, and so on. And Ale mentioned something which I haven't heard about till now. And that's just how fast the content was cleared when it was nerfed up to Black Temple, that is, in a specific region, China. So TBC launch date was quite staggered across the world. The earliest to get their hands on World of Warcraft's first expansion were mainly Western regions on the 17th of January 2007. And the last to the party was China, who, due to NetEase having to approve the expansion for their customers, it took them considerably longer, and it came out on the 6th of December 2007, which is about 8 months after the first players got it. The rules are totally different over there, and so much more is censored. Undead don't even have bones sticking out, for instance. However, they didn't have the same experience that everybody else had been having since launch, as the content was rolled out up to the stage where it was at in other regions. So China launched with Black Temple open, and only about 2 months before Zul'Aman would become available too. Just for reference, 2.1 and Black Temple was 22nd of May 2007, 2.3 and Zul'Aman was 13th of November 2007, and China got the game on the 6th of September, remember, so you might be seeing where this is going. Of course, since these players had to wait for such a long time, they had quite literally over a year of Naxxramas as the newest raiding content. I couldn't find if 1.11 was a worldwide release, but assuming it was, China had been playing Naxxramas and gearing up from it for just under 15 months. So yeah, looks like they didn't have such a short-lived Naxxramas, as is always brought up for people having so few clears on it. Picturing Classic how many guilds are playing at such a higher level now than they were back in the day, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect a very large number of players to be fully kitted out in Tier 3 after just a couple of months worth of Naxx clears. Here's the kicker then. A guild in China called the Seven went from launch in their region to having cleared Black Temple, all bosses including Illidan, in 52 days. Now, you probably hear 52 days now and think, wow, that sounds slow, and I guess that's how far we've come. There have been purposefully overbuffed private servers releasing with Tier 5 on launch that were cleared in mere weeks. This sub 2 month clear though back in the day was totally unthinkable. Other top end guilds had taken 4 months from launch to start landing kills on Vash and Kael'thas, the big 2 gatekeepers of Tier 5 content. And they couldn't just walk into Black Temple either. I won't get into the full achievement list here, but let's just say you had to have done pretty much everything that came before it, as well as players getting a kill on Rage Winterchill in Hyjal in order to get into Black Temple. But as remarked in the article here, China were playing with advantages. Though never having got their hands on the game, they would have been able to see what other players did to defeat encounters, what kind of resistance gear would be needed, what classes started to pull ahead in performance in the new content, and arguably most importantly of all, the patch notes in between launch and when they picked the game up post patch 2.2, and just how many nerfs and or bug fixes have been put into the game. 2.1 took a big old nerf hammer to much of the content which had been a real challenge on launch, including, well, quite literally all of the PvE content, no exaggeration. Gruul nerfed, Megtheridon's Lair nerfed, Karazhan mega nerfed, Heroic Dungeons squished, Tempest Keep more than just a little bit set back, Serpent Shrine Cavern sweeping nerfs with big bug fixes on Vash. Patch 2.1 also had changes to the number of Vials of Eternity that dropped from Vash and Kael from 1 per raid to 4, making it much quicker for players to get into Hyjal and then be able to move on to Black Temple. Making sense? Also, and I just love this, is that checking the screenshot of the kill, no really this is what we have to go off of, I tried to upscale a pic, I know it's really scuffed, but I can still spy some tier 3 in there, especially on those mages on the left. Even back then, Illidan was defeated by players still in Naxxramas level gear. Now that's interesting. So the sub 2 month clear on Illidan is starting to make a bit more sense, in both that they were able to do this due to A, having spent such a long time in Naxxramas acquiring tier 3 bis, B, having been able to observe the meta developments in other regions, and C, having overall an easier path to the raid tier thanks to bug fixes and nerfs between launch and when they received the game. And this was still back then with all the usual excuses, worse internet, bad PCs, players weren't as good or as knowledgeable. You know the drill by this one by now, I'm sure. So back around to Classic, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm going to be saying now. Though this may have been a top guild back then, we are just at such a higher level of player overall in my experience. And this time around, even if we do launch on a later patch in TBC for itemization, well, next gear is just totally insane. You're like a decked out level 60 twink once you have your full gear set put on. It really does compete with early levels of raiding gear in TBC as well, and was clearly good enough back then to be able to take on tier 6 content. That's crazy. And though there were certainly many bug fixes to make the content just better, the nerfs came in hard. And you do wonder, even without nerfs these days, would the content really stand much of a chance? Would it be better to purposefully make the content straight up harder, increase boss health numbers, make their abilities happen more frequently, have bosses hit more, or increase enemy armor values? Private servers have done exactly these things to tune the content to a higher degree, and I can't lie, it's a tough thing to get right. On one hand, defeating a difficult boss is one of the best feelings you can get out of World of Warcraft. It makes that sweet gear you stand about with in Shattrath so much more stylish, and makes the content last longer through further progression due to the nature of the difficulty. On the other hand, there's one raid difficulty in TBC. There's no normal mode to dip your toes or get used to it, there's no cooldown resets on wipe, and it can easily be preventative for any non-optimal specs getting into a raid and getting a spot because they become so much more contested after raiding downgrades from 40 to the 25-man format. There are still plenty of fights in earlier tiers where melee are just straight up not going to have a good time compared to ranged because of the nature of the boss mechanics. But then again, there are still 10-man raids, there are still heroic dungeons as well as badge gear, which is later also put into Crusade, on top of the 2.4 catch-up gear from the Isle of Keldernas. These are all pretty solid alternate progression paths for gearing, though not as good as raid items for sure. But then again, exclusivity can be a good thing in an MMO too. The nerf content has been blasted through in the past, and I've no doubt that will be the case again. Do we leave it as it is? Is the 25-man raiding just more about the atmosphere than the difficulty? Have it pre-nerf, minus bugs, and see what happens? Or tune it up, make it a challenge? We can always nerf it later, right? I certainly wouldn't mind seeing the content being harder personally. Then again, what even could make some bosses hard when they have few mechanics? Do you make everything into a DPS check? Does a healer cancel a cast and your tank just gets deleted? Being hit by anything bad just becomes a one-shot perhaps? It does run the risk of requiring heavily metagaming, and even then, not all of your cooldowns are available every attempt unless you want to wait for them each pull. How can difficulty account for that? What do you reckon? Let me know below. Thanks all so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon. If you like what you see, do give the video a like and subscribe, as there will be plenty more to come. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.